Hello, and welcome to the latest episode of Enterprising Minds. We have Alex, Ruthie, and Dave all in attendance, so it's going to be a good show. Today, going to do a shift in perspectives just a little bit to something fun, and it's Chat GPT or GPT's AI for gaming. So I will readily admit off the top that this is not a use case that I have thought of. So I'm looking forward to learning and discovering some more. So who wants to start?
Yeah, I'll kick it off a little bit. You gave a little bit of the intro, but one of the things that we've been seeing happen over the last couple decades is gaming driving a ton of the innovations and the use cases in particular for a lot of the technology advancements on the hardware and the software side. So I think by now everybody's well aware that NVIDIA has just been a powerhouse over the last decade and change within the graphics card space, really to enable all of the fantastic things you can do with PC gaming. Well, lo and behold, that had a cool tangential side capability of being able to power some of the more advanced LLMs. So there's one case in which all of a sudden you've got this whole thing going on in gaming over here becoming a part of this current AI discussion. But now we've got these cool LLMs, we've got some advancements on the software side. What are potentially some of the feedback loops we get on the back end? I'll throw out a couple that sort of come to mind that we can maybe tease out, and then we'll see where the conversation goes. So, first and foremost, near and dear to my heart are the Elder Scrolls games. I spent many hours in front of a PC and an Xbox playing Skyrim. And boy, do I know the NPC lines. Arrow to the knee, sweet roll, you name it, right? Mm-hmm. Those are wonderful. We all love them. We have many memes around them, but boy, wouldn't it be fantastic if our NPCs could truly come to life with dialogues that were a little bit more robust. What kind of what does that open up? Storylines in games. What happens when all of a sudden the storylines aren't just you get to pick three, the good option, the neutral option, and the bad option, and you get however many different storylines. What potential do we have for some of those? And then I think back to some of the fun text-based games I played. For a while I played the Hitchhiker game just for fun, where you had to sort of very precisely state the different things you did within very specific parameters. Hey, maybe there's another cool opportunity. So I will pass it off to you guys and see which ones you want to run with first, and let's see where it goes.
I will be honest. The only question that popped into my head, because I'm new to this space, is: does anybody really actually choose the good side story? Like, why wouldn't you just destroy the village?
Literally every single time. I cannot do the bad one, even if I try. Like, I have to go watch YouTube videos to see the bad ending, because I will never, ever choose the bad ending, ever.
Does it majority do you actually feel bad? Like when you have to destroy? Really? Okay.
Yeah, true story.
So maybe this is a Dave problem. I don't.
See, I think everybody else just saves and then completely wipes out the village, then reinstalls, and is like, yep, we'll continue this conversation. Okay. I got that out of my system. I'm good.
Okay.
Yeah. I know there's morality games, though. It's actually kind of interesting. There's quite a few studies that show the exact same thing, though, that basically majority of people all go on the positive, nice side of things. But there's also a little, I think, bias with that, because a lot of those games are geared toward that, where they reward good behavior. You get the extra thing, you get the whatever benefit or something like that, or achievement or something. So I don't know how many games really actually play it neutral. But I don't know, you could. I mean, that's actually, to Ruthie's point, this is the expansion of the LLM. I mean, you could take that narrative in a completely different direction than what they were anticipating originally with the game, and you could make it into your own little story.
And I wonder what the sort of current constraints are, right? Perhaps you can have the dialogue capabilities but you're not going to be able to change the constraints of the game. Like the map might still be only so big. Although I think about some of the new space exploration games, and they sort of have taken the parameters off the map, and it's sort of an infinitely creating thing.
Or voxel based. There's some of those which are kind of low graphic, but able to have large environments and still load fairly well. I think
it would
that's
seem
gonna be
to me that you'd have to have a lot of the reasoning and the logic side of it, right? Because like it's one thing to produce dialogue, but it's another thing to have the memory of the choices and the actions that were taken in the beginning, and then how that happened, or like what are the possible outcomes from these choices,
and the culture, like the elements that kind of make up the atmosphere of the game. That's actually one that I've played around with some GPTs, some that are meant to be like role-playing GPTs where you can say, let's start a game, and I'll say, okay, do you want to create a character? And you go through like a character sheet development, and then once you do that, they start you with the scenario and you kind of get into it. The other ones which I found,
for our audience members, character sheet development is a throwback to Dungeons and Dragons, in which you develop a character with all kinds of personality trait or properties, traits, skill sets, knowledge levels, and you use that character throughout your imagination gameplay. Thank
you. I was unaware of that.
Oh, yeah. Naming yourself, all those things, picking a name, picking gender, race. You can be an alien, you can be whatever the heck you want. So that's kind of fun. What I found, exactly to Dave's point about the reasoning. So there are some that were developed completely for the idea of role playing. So there's like Cyberpunk 2077 one, and they use all the slang from the game. They start you off really well and kind of plays pretty well. But once you start hitting those memory limits, then it starts forgetting what kind of currency you have. I even messed with the game a little bit of like, I got the payment for the end of the job, and I was like, yep, I opened the envelope and look at the $50 million that is in the envelope, which is supposed to be like $5,000. And it's like, yep, your $50 million is all there in the envelope. It's quite heavy. It's like you're able to like mess with the logic of it. But it kind of worked for a little while. But the other ones that I found that were almost even better was a few of them that are GPTs meant to help you play a video game, very particular for video games. So Red Dead Redemption 2 was one. Witcher, one of the Witcher games was another one. But it was basically just supposed to give you hints and help you along with the game. And that was the whole thing. It was kind of based off a wiki, kind of a basis behind it. Right. If you asked it to do a role-playing game, they were phenomenal. And they were great because they knew the side stories, they knew the quest, they knew all the characters, they knew the elements, they knew the environment. They basically knew kind of those rules that make a movie or a game fun. And they don't try to break too many of them, and they don't allow you to break too many of them because they're like, that's not a part of this world. You can't do that. You're gonna instead be friends with this person instead. Like, you can't change the relationship of this person. They can't become an enemy because they're your ally, and that's just it. Like stuff like that will start to enforce those kind of pieces, which made it a self-contained adventure that was fun. And I think as the memory expands, but you're still right though, that if you had a custom, let's say you made your own little, Mario world called Dave's World or something like that, you have to make it so complete for this thing to really be, lifelike and, feel like you're a part of this environment, until you basically are starting to say, wait, no, you're playing Harry Potter and you're not playing Dave's game anymore. You're just making up your own thing. And now you're completely playing a different game. You're just playing within this one. Exactly. It was like, you can't throw fireballs in 2077.
Okay, so this is kind of I love the way that this has moved too, because you brought up a bunch of points that I would never have considered. And one of the things I think about with your wiki example is what those provide, which it sounds like the other one didn't quite have, is the world building aspect and sort of the rules of the game within the world. So there's the rules of the game in terms of how you play, but then there's sort of what is permissible within the various elements of the game to make it fun. Because to some degree, games do need to have rules and sort of choices to be made in order to have an element of fun to them. And one of the things that came to mind immediately when you started saying that is Magic the Gathering, which it's a game that's been around for over 25 years. I think it just hit its anniversary, maybe even a little bit longer. And this game has had huge staying power. For those who don't know, it's a trading card game. If you go into any Walmart or Target and you see that trading card section, you're going to see Magic the Gathering up there. It's been around forever. And one of the things that Magic the Gathering is based off of is this idea of you've got 5 different colors within this card game that you're playing, each with distinct rules and things that the colors can and can't do, which then opens up a whole bunch of creative space for interactions you can have, but within those set of rules. And what it sounds like to me is when we're thinking about, GPT-based gaming, or sort of where you expand, it still goes back to that back to basics point that Dave, you're always bringing up. Like, the basics of creating a game are still the same. It's just what capabilities you have to bring that game to life get expanded.
Right.
Kind of two elements there. You have a creativity side of it, which is kind of creating the interesting slang that 2077 has, or the names of the spells in Harry Potter, or the types of aliens that might exist in Star Wars. I mean, that creativity adds the color to the game and makes it kind of interesting to play. But you're right, there's also a whole nother side of it, which is like the game master piece, which is, how is this game going to be played? What are the do's and don'ts? What are the ways that we're going to kind of control things and push things into certain directions? How do you create that very solid foundation that you can basically, put that paint of color on top of?
Some of this stuff, just thinking of something, you bring up Witcher or Skyrim, and I've played both those games. I just got done with Diablo, the latest Diablo. I like those games because you can just you can go in, you can pop in, play for like half hour, you can step out. Right. I'm not like the diehard. I'm going to go get every trophy, every minor thing.
Earthy, the achievement hunter.
But my thing with those games, Witcher definitely comes to mind. How large do you actually need the world to be? Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, at what point is it too big? Because if you're not, you're gonna miss out on the story. You're not gonna care as much anymore because you're just kind of aimlessly wandering, doing all these side quests or whatever. And I don't know that that would be interesting, at least, for me at least, right? I like having like Call of Duty is nice every once in a while. I'll go from the large role-playing games to then go to like Call of Duty, because then it's, this is the one stage. There are 100 guys you have to shoot, and that's it. How fast can you get through it? Right? Like that's a totally different experience of gaming than these really large worlds that could have infinite variability. There was one game from like 10 years ago. I don't know that enough people found out about it, but it was called Heavy Rain. And it was one that just sort of ended up in my collection somehow. I think it was like a freebie for, buying the console. But it was essentially a playable choose your own adventure mystery. And you play this dad at the mall whose kid gets kidnapped, and then you have to try to find the kid. And so the conversations you have with the characters impact the outcome. The choices you make, when you make them, like, do you make the choice in time? Yes or no? And then what is the choice that you made? All of that influences the outcome. So they had to write some ridiculous number of, story endings and chains, and how each one crosses, and where you can all end up. So that came to mind, where it's you really do need the reasoning, even if you are searching for like an endpoint to the storyline with something that feels infinitely variable. You still have to have those mapped out, and how does that actually happen? Yeah.
That's where I think some of the capability piece comes in. your different games are going to have different purposes, to your point of like, sometimes you just want to get in, kill some zombies, kill some aliens and leave. Like that's just what you're there for, right? Or I would put Candy Crush into a similar category of, you're just doing a thing. We're not worried about story building. We're not doing like, we're just doing the thing. Then you've got your other games, which are much more, hey, let's explore, let's collect things, let's put things together. Yeah, a story can play to some extent, but a lot of what you're doing is more of the exploration piece. Then you've got those more heavy narrative-based games that you're referencing, Dave. I think Firewatch is another one that comes to mind, where it's almost more of a novel come to life with the ability to sort of actively participate with choices you're making. And I wonder if where the various advancements in AIs comes in is opening the possibilities within each of those various buckets. Like perhaps the types of games we play don't fundamentally change, but just we get a little extra nuance and it builds over time. Maybe you get a few more mappings because all of a sudden you're not having to manually map out the different story flows as a result of those. Yeah.
So just trying to relate this to something that I might be a little more familiar with, like as we talk about the AI sides of things, at least on the business and the marketing side, we've talked a lot about AI agents, and that's come up a lot recently with HubSpot and Salesforce having their conferences recently.
Wait, say more on that, Dave, before you move on or talk about it.
So the idea for the agents are to have sort of autonomous AI systems. They're calling it agents because, teammate, coworker, or, replacer does not sit well with employees. But what they're supposed to do is, like with Salesforce, they specifically have these, understand and interpret sort of what your customers are asking, your questions, using the natural language, and then taking actions based on the information they receive and the information that they're trained on. So it's a very vertical piece, to your point of the culture thing, like making the AI fit a company culture, a marketing culture, having the lingo, having all of these things, right? Do you think that sort of AI agent piece, where it might be a very small model for a specific task, could you just be running a whole bunch of those sort of smaller models within the game, or are you thinking one massive piece or combination of the two in order to facilitate the gameplay?
That's such a cool idea. Some of the initial thoughts that come to mind as you're talking through this AI agent idea and how it might relate to games, I think of some games in which you're given like a sidekick,
right?
And that, right? Or you have a person who's following you throughout the game. Gosh, I wish I could remember some of the names of the games. I'm drawing a blank here though. There's one zombie apocalypse game in which there's a girl following the main character the whole time, right? I could see that being a use case, and where all of a sudden you've got a much more interactive sidekick who's coming along. Maybe you can have more dialogue with them about the thing that just happened, or they're a little bit more sophisticated in how they're playing the game. Another thought is like, to your point about having multiples in there, that also opens up new space of, maybe it's quite sophisticated to have that one sidekick in a game. Maybe some of the technology advancements make it possible, so you're going along with an entire team, each of which is semi-autonomous.
Right. Because at least for me, with my sort of creative writing background, I'm thinking, okay, if you look at character types, so if you have like that large world, like a Witcher, like the Red Dead, a town or a village sheriff is a very particular personality type, even though there is a range within that type, right? So I mean, you could have like a sheriff agent that is trained on particular behaviors. They move a certain way. They have certain behavior patterns, speech patterns that would be similar to other sheriff characters, so that whenever they come up, you could have that combination of attributes or whatever for a particular sheriff. The problem then would be having the memory to, you know, Sheriff Johnson is different from Sheriff, you know, whatever.
That could make it kind of fun, though. I mean, that can also kind of add some like spice of randomness into it. So let's say you're trying to rob a bank and you're just like walking around the street waiting.
As you do.
And some little kid runs up, as one does, right? And a little kid runs up to the sheriff and says, "Hey, I lost my horse. Can you help me?" And then suddenly the sheriff runs off with the kid. And then now sheriff's not a problem in the town and you have more access to that bank that you're trying to do. Right. Or the other time, like, you know, someone points out saying, "Who's this random newcomer?" to the sheriff, and the sheriff comes over to you and starts talking to you. Like, it could make it a little bit more interesting and a little bit, you know, different. But you're right. I mean, bartenders, you could have a whole bunch of different AI agent bartenders who they will sell you certain things. They'll tell about the rumors of the town, but they don't sell you a horse because they're a bartender. You know, like there's limits to them.
Isn't this what they did in Westworld? Did you guys ever watch that?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
Yeah. Except they were like cyborgs. Well, not cyborgs, but androids.
Well, next episode, we'll talk about.
Just keep taking this further.
Yeah, exactly.
As I think about some of this, go Alex, and
it was just a quick one about thinking about the action, more first-person shooter kind of games. There was one I was playing, Vermintide, where basically it was an online-only hand-to-hand combat kind of, or first-person shooter kind of a game. So you'd load into the lobby, which was this bar, and in the bar you could upgrade your weapons, you could do some other stuff, and then you could talk to the bartender who just gave you like 3 lines. And you wait there in this, really it's a lobby, for the other players to load into the lobby before you can say, "Let's go," and then you all leave the door, and then you actually start to play the mission that you've selected as a team.
Leroy Jenkins.
Yeah, right. But it got really boring at times because you're waiting for people to load in, and you wanted to like play a particular map that wasn't as popular, but you needed it for, you know, your progression or something like that. And there was nothing to do. I mean, I upgraded all my weapons. I talked to the bartender, heard the 3 lines, and I was just waiting for other people to load in. It would be, even though it has nothing to do with the game, it would make things more interesting if the bartender had a bunch of things to talk about, and you could have a conversation with them while you're waiting, basically. Like, it would make some of those elements seem like less cookie cutter. So each place or each spaceport looks a little different on your Star Wars adventure, whatever you're doing. Or it could make it just a little bit more interesting when really you're just waiting for a different game mechanic to happen, which is other players need to load into your lobby. Ruthie, where were you going?
Well, I think about all the different examples we've given and the what ifs and all, wouldn't this be cool? And it also just occurred to me, I have no idea and the level of feasibility across all of these of, oh yeah, you're just plugging a GPT to the bartender, should be easy. Like, is that true? I have no idea. Like,
there's
probably
a mod
not.
for Skyrim to upgrade Lydia to a GPT, and it kind of works, kind of doesn't work. Because there's limitations to it as well, but the starting narrative, at least with her and stuff like that, it works really well. So you can play it for a little while.
People are trying.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
That's pretty cool. The other thought that came to mind is the compute power needed for this, and what do the next generation of consoles need, or PCs need, to support all this activity? Or on the back end, like, what are sort of the servers that are going to be needed? And I think back to some of the conversation we had a few years ago about going from 4G to 5G, and like how that opens up a whole bunch of capabilities that people don't even think about, but then all of a sudden it's there, and the way we use the technology shifts because what's possible opens up greatly.
You're seeing that with the LLM pieces. Like, I'll have to find a link to an article on it. But like Microsoft is trying to convince New York State to keep 3 Mile Island open so it can exclusively.
They did it.
They did it?
They did it.
Okay.
Yeah, they're reopening a nuclear power plant just to power their AI.
Yeah. So there you go. There you go. The needs are high. You know, cue Godzilla.
Hold out for the PlayStation 6, everybody. That's the takeaway.
Yeah. It'll be interesting, and it is fascinating too, because like I've been in a number of conversations specifically around how to use AI like within a particular business, and they're not that much different than this, you know, kind of gaming scenario. I mean, it's a different scale and a different spin on it, but really, honestly, it's very, very similar. So that'll be fun to think about in the coming days, for sure. So anyway, I hope all of you have found this interesting. Like always, please like, subscribe, share, and, you know, use the email that's in the description to send us your thoughts, whether you like it or other perspectives on this topic. It's an interesting lens to use. So without further ado, we will see you all in the next episode coming out in 2 weeks. Take care.
Thanks, Will.
Cheers.